Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This podcast is made from the spaces I host every week on the Clubhouse app in the Social Impact Level Up Club. If you don't know me, I'm Wendy V, and I am a coach for socially conscious entrepreneurs. I help you develop your social impact mission, clarify your vision, and turn your ideas into action. Every week, I talk to leaders with a social impact mission about money mindset and manifestation. We also hold weekly spaces for our collective to join forces and change the world. In each episode, you'll hear me moderate the conversation with my two co-hosts, Rodrigo Bravo and Santiago Cáceres. Through this podcast, we hope that you will learn, grow, and thrive with our collective. Now, here's a little bit more about this episode. Oh man, this episode, even listening to it makes me just, wow. The journey to get to where I've been and the standards I used to live by, I've had to give up so much in order to live life the way I want to live, to be happy, and to just be able to create and inspire and live in a way that's consistent with my values. What success looks like to me may be very different from other people, but what I do know is I don't need to define my success on their standards and not mine. So today's topic was really about a conversation amongst the community, and there isn't a definition of success. So I struggled to put that word in the title because there isn't always a common definition of success. I think a lot of the time we're measuring ourselves not against our own success, but against a image or a definition that's been imposed upon us from some other place. And sometimes when we inherit that image or we think that that is what we're supposed to be doing in order to be successful, it's not what we're currently doing or how we currently look. And when that happens, we can feel unworthy, we can feel less than, we can feel like we're not being successful. And it's really difficult to measure yourself against a standard that probably is not ever, achievable essentially because you didn't set that standard. So now what you have is this kind of high standard that you're trying to reach, and you're doing as many efforts as you can, but you're not really actually reaching it. And that can cause a lot of mental strife. So the reason for this conversation is, one, to talk about this whole phenomenon of success and the pressure to succeed, or what that looks like, particularly when you have things like social media and you have other influences in our lives that are bringing that pressure to us and are trying to help us, I think in our journey, grow, but sometimes the pressure isn't necessarily helping us grow. It's actually hindering us. So the conversation today is anything around those topics. And I think for me, where I wanted to start the conversation is, at least in the early years and in my family, I think that this pressure was something that had been growing with me. So as I maybe developed it for certain reasons, certain coping mechanisms in my family structure, I might have then transmuted that purpose and kind of mirrored it over into other aspects of my life where, now I have very healthy relationships with my family. But in the past, those relationships were really built on the need for validation, for attention, and I was given it, but not always by my father, right? So it doesn't have to be the whole family. It can even just be one person who might contribute to some of these thoughts. And I know that the pressure to succeed was never from my mother. My mother always came to all of my award ceremonies and was like, "You're doing so much, you're doing so good, keep going, but also, this isn't necessary for you to be like perfect," right? And so my mom was very good at telling me, like, "You've created this own boundary for yourself, you realize that, right?" But I always wished that my dad would show up to one of those things, and he never did. In the 12 years that I was in, K through 12, like in actual school versus college, my dad never showed up. So when it came to college, oddly enough, my dad decided to start showing up. And he helped move into my dorm room. He was at my high school graduation. He was at my college graduation. He was at my grad school graduation. And it was really interesting because through all of those conversations that we've had over the years, we've definitely repaired our relationship to where it's, it's good. It's not like the best father-daughter video you'll see on a commercial somewhere, but we're cool. but it's because he started showing up, right? And the pressure for me to continue to keep going and keep going and keep going was then kind of moved from, okay, I'm trying to really do this because I want my dad to show up. But it was more moved because I thought that other people were looking at me then. I had already been achieving so much that if I didn't keep achieving, I would be a letdown, right? So if it's like, okay, I'm achieving all the way through high school, I then get into college, I then get into an Ivy League school, and then I'm, okay, well now I'm at the beginning of a career and I'm back at the bottom again, right? So how do you then keep going? And of course, as a Latina and as a woman of color who was not necessarily born into an affluent family, the pressure to keep going was also monetary, right? Because as you grow in your status and you grow in your career, you grow in your monetary capabilities to earn. So for me, that pressure came, where it started, I mentioned, and I'll recap because Rodrigo just got here, where the pressure to succeed started with this relationship with my dad, where, it was always trying to be seen and validated by him, and he didn't show up. Then when he did show up, by then I had already moved that pressure to succeed over to my educational space. And then I moved that over to my career space. So as I started doing more things, I became known as the special projects girl because I was the girl who would not let the ball fall, right? Like if you chose me to be the leader of this team, the thing is going to get done. It's going to get done really, really, really well, but it's also going to probably kill me. And so as I went through my career, I kept putting myself in these positions where I would get a bunch of responsibility, be super stressed, feel like I had this intense pressure to be successful at whatever it was I was trying to do. And then as I went to the next thing, I kept just transferring this pressure to succeed, not only on myself, but also onto the teams that I led, right? And it took me a minute to realize that, well, now I've turned something from my dad problem to my education problem, my career problem. Now I turned it into a team problem, and now I'm imposing it on other people. Like, this is just ridiculous, right? So I've had to, as a leader, especially in my last position where I was the head of a department of about 20 to 25 people, I had to set standards for them that were successful, but I also had to help them understand that the pressure to succeed wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the people above me, but I was shielding as much of that pressure for them to be the best people that they could be. Because I knew, and it almost killed me again, I knew that my team was bomb. My team could do anything. My team was rocking every single thing we got. So they can shine in ways that allows them to grow as people. But in the environment we were in, that required me again to be the person to take the brunt of this pressure to succeed. Because if there was 2 words wrong in the thing that they wrote, and I had edited that thing, and I didn't catch those 2 words, somebody above me was going to notice. And in the environment that we were in, those 2 words were the one thing that that person or those people would see, right? Like nothing else was good enough. So the pressure to succeed doesn't always come from you. And it can be from the environment you're in, it can be from the people around you, it can be from, again, the monetary aspect of feeling like you need to be earning a certain amount of money, or even just societal expectations that we inherit as being members of, whatever societies we're part of. So this is my way of introing a very big conversation that I want to invite our community to, because I want you to think about, as I invite you all up, how this has kind of gone through your life story or your life journey. And if you are someone like me who's been, achieving back to back to back, have you set yourself up, if you do fail, that it's okay, right? So if a failure, quote unquote failure, or a challenge that you cannot be successful at comes at you, will you mentally be okay? So have you done that work internally to validate yourself and to be comfortable with yourself if you do not continue this pattern of success? So there's so many questions in here that I want to hear about, because I know I think about this all the time. And so I know, Rodrigo, you came in a little bit late. David, you've been here since the jump. So I'm going to let David actually go first, because he's been here for a minute and he probably has something he wants to say since he hopped up. And then Rodrigo, do you want to go after David, just so you can get a little bit more flavor for the conversation? Cool. Okay. Yeah, David, hop in. Good to
Hey,
see you.
Wendy, thank you so much for launching this conversation. And I really do appreciate it coming from a Latino background where we know that we're basically living inside of a pressure cooker. And it's only a matter of time where we could ask other questions about ourselves, about how effective we are as individuals, and our society really sucks too. At the same time, because we living in the United States, like you need to be at 100 and be amazing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Enneagram, and it's basically a personality um, trait and style, and it helps divvy up your personality. But just to say something short and sweet, I'm a number three, and a number three is the achiever. It's constantly looking to do something that is right, something to impress, something that you think is the right thing to do. And while there are great things about that trait because you can really connect with people well, it also could be really, really toxic because you end up stifling your growth or you think that you're just never going to be good enough. So I don't have too much to add to what you're saying. More thank but I just wanted to say thank you for starting this conversation because it's one that probably leads to a lot of trauma and years of having to walk through that. And what I've done for myself is just take it a day at a time and count your blessings and be thankful for what you do have right now because tomorrow's another day and I'll be worried. Well, we can worry about it then. But thank you. I'm David and I'm done speaking.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, David, for being here. It's good to see you. And you're the which one are you out of the Enneagram?
I'm definitely a three, an achiever, and I don't know
Oh,
how
okay.
I tied with the seven, which is the enthusiast. I don't. They're literally the same number, and I think I'm more three than seven. But es un
So
revolú.
I have taken it before, was I was curious. I'm the helper achiever, which like totally characterizes me to a T. And I laughed when I got that. So when you brought it up, I was over here giggling because I was like, this conversation is very much about me being the helper achiever all the time. So yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So Rodrigo, do you want to jump in and then we'll go to Carmen and anyone else if you want to come to the conversation. And please share the room, guys. If you want to get more people in here to talk about this topic, let people know that we're having this conversation. You can do the little, it looks like a recycle sign on the bottom left, but you also can just share the link if you want to. So Rodrigo, what's going on with you? How are you? And what do you think about this? I know you have the same dad conversation because we talked about our dads being very similar.
Don't get me started,
So
Wendy.
I was gonna say you don't even need to go all the way back to childhood because I already put that part of the conversation on the table. You could start it wherever you want.
Now that's funny, and I appreciate David sharing right now as well, right? Because it does bring up a lot of trauma, right? And I think that's the good thing about this club. We're not necessarily here to trauma bond. We're talking about how we've dealt with the trauma and moved past from it. And I think that's really critical, really important because succeeding, everybody has different definitions of succeeding. And for me, growing up watching my father succeed, or at least succeed in his definition, it really set me back quite a bit because I ended up really thinking to myself, like, I actually don't really care to succeed. And I don't mean that in the sense like I'm gonna be broke, I'm gonna be homeless, or so. I'm just saying like I'm not gonna take the road that he took, the trajectory that he took to succeed, because a lot of times the road that he took was questionable, ethically, morally. The power dynamics which he seemed to enjoy, I found, many times disgusting. And so, him trying to kind of impose it on me and me growing up with that kind of mindset of kind of dealing with it two really, really held me back for quite a while. And I think that's why it's important to recognize that and to see where other folks are in that journey, because a lot of times folks that grow up like us that are Latino, Latina, Latinx, and we feel like all this pressure. We don't even realize, man, there's so many people that are going in the same pressure to succeed because of our upbringing and because of those humble beginnings, right? Nobody, you don't want to be the one that your parents crossed a river and traveled 1,000 miles just so you could be here and somehow fail in their eyes, right? And so there's that pressure. That's just that origin story that you kind of have to live up to. And I remember going through that myself, and going to school, getting married early, having my kids early, and then everything just being destroyed. I just destroyed it all. I got a divorce. I had I had a good job, but it wasn't where I was planning to go into. I didn't become the dreams that my father wanted, all this other stuff. So I spent, years just kind of wandering for a bit, right? And I think that's why it's so important that we kind of discuss that, because if people are going through that now, you got to recognize those signs. So yeah, I feel like, the pressures to succeed is so prevalent with our own communities, right? And it has a lot to do with their upbringing as well. But at the end of the day, we all have different uh, definitions when it comes to being successful. And for me, it's really led to this: okay, I want to be happy. That's really my goal. If I'm happy, I'm successful. And my happiness doesn't necessarily mean that other folks, namely my parents and my family, feel like I'm successful. Even though I am, I certainly feel that I'm successful, and I've met that success that probably my dad even has. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really make me happy, and that's really where my success lies, in being happy. And growing up, Wendy, I'm not gonna lie, I don't even think my dad believed in that, if he was happy, he was successful. That wasn't his definition of success. And I think that's why there's such a conundrum there within our own community of what success is, and the sacrifices that we do for that success. So I just wanted to lead to with that portion of the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Rodrigo. So many things in there. And I mentioned at the top of the room, I think, before you got here, that there is no real definition of success, and sometimes we kind of inherit it from different places, but you don't know where it comes from until you do some of this work, like you said, to heal and to sort of analyze what all was going on. And it's not necessarily trauma bonding in the conversations, but it is helpful to know that others have had similar experiences and to hear the strategies that people have developed to deal with this in a healthy way, right? To be able to say, no, I am successful, and my definition of success is happiness. And I definitely agree with that. I think that happiness is something that a lot of people don't even endeavor to aspire to. Sometimes people don't think that it's achievable for them to live a life that really truly is, blessed with the joyousness of happiness a lot more often than it is, challenging in downtimes. And so if you can find a way to bring that to yourself, that's definitely, I think, a success for your life and how you're living it, because it's something you have to actively try to do versus something that you just allow to happen to you, and it comes. So Carmen, jump in here. I know you've been listening, and I'm really excited to hear what you want to say. But if anybody wants to come up, we're talking today about releasing the pressure to succeed. And it's really a lifelong journey, I think. And so we're just talking about where we are in that journey and what our personal experience has been. And if there are stories you want to share, feel free.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I mean, Rodrigo says something that pretty much started my pressure in succeeding, crossing that river, right? Being a daughter of an immigrant, crossing the river just pretty much was the first big pressure of, your parents are bringing you over to have a better opportunity and you must succeed. You cannot fail them. And that was just something that, was an unwritten pressure that was always there as a young child. But as coming in here and learning different things, there was never really a guide of how you can succeed, right? As a child, your parents don't know a lot of times how to guide you, except like just go to school, do good in school, and you'll be fine. But there was no, encouragement, at least because I come from an immigrant parent who worked 3 jobs. She was never there. I was, a great student. I wanted to succeed. I just didn't know which way to go. I didn't have the guidance or the support. So it ended up that as I became a teenager, I started putting that pressure on myself to succeed. And now succeed, has different layers, right? Success can be career wise, happiness, loving yourself and finding yourself, building that family. I mean, there's so many levels of success, but I have put so much pressure on myself to have it all. I wanted each and every facet of my life to be successful, not only so I can be happy with myself, but be able to provide for my children and make my mother proud, and it was something that I had put so much pressure on. Now I'm in my 40s. I feel like I have reached, the goals that everybody had expected from me, I guess, to become successful. But most importantly, I have found my own self success instead of own self love. I guess you can say it all goes together. And I think it's very important that we continue to go on that path of self love, and whatever that self love will lead you to whatever success you're looking for. But it's definitely a lot of unwritten rules, and things that we all have to kind of keep pushing forward, and just find your happiness. For me as a mother, I'm here to support my children and my boys that I coach. And it's like, what is it that you are looking for, right? Right now, I have a couple kids that love drawing. All right, they're creative. Let me show them the way. Let me find them schools that they can probably attend, different apps that they can use to use their creativity, whatever it is. I kind of provide them with the tools. And I think a lot of us didn't have those tools coming from a country, to find better opportunity, where we just kind of had to find our way to success, whatever that may be for each of us. That's my input. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I so many things in there, Carmen. Yes, I definitely want to talk about this family generational part too a little bit more, because I have a story in there as well that I wanted to share. And I think the Success First Happiness. Thanks for the link, Rodrigo. And Carmen, I really like what you were saying, and I forgot. Shoot, I started writing it down. Oh, like that there's no guide to succeed, and I think that that's so true, because there really isn't a roadmap or anything. We all just have such different lived experiences. But I know that when I was younger, I always saw other women that were successful, quote unquote successful, and I always watched them. I mean, like, I was the biggest Oprah fan ever, because I was always thinking, well, if they could succeed, I could succeed. Like, that's the basic premise of this. But then there was always this other complete different scenario that was like, well, but how did they do it, right? Like, what is the story? What is the journey? Where is the roadmap? What did they, like, okay, I got to go to college, and then I got to go this, and I got to go that. And suddenly it was this like checklist of things that I needed to do in order to be successful. And before I knew it, I was like you, exactly like you were saying, working my way down the aspects of my life, trying to check off things on this list that were benchmarks of success, when in reality, I didn't even think I probably wanted some of those things, right? And when I really, started moving forward in my life in a way that was authentic to me and what I really wanted, I had to say no a few times to some of those things, because although they were markers of quote unquote success, they weren't the things that were going to bring me happiness. So I definitely have had my own share of that type of experience. But Rodrigo, do you want to jump in, and then we'll go to Juan, Doc Rico, and then to Denai.
Yeah, no, great recap there, Wendy. So just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. But I also wanted to just touch on two things, right? First, Wendy, when she said about just the checklist mark, that reminds me why my first 2 years of my undergrad was pre med. It's like I never wanted to do this. It was a constant dream of my dad for me to be a doctor, right? And so that was the goal. That was the end. That was the route, right? And everybody loved that idea. Everybody loved that idea that I would talk. Oh my God, you're gonna be a doctor. That's great. Blah 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 blah. And the whole time, I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to be a teacher. And my dad was crestfallen when I changed my major to education. He was just, oh my God, he didn't understand it. He literally said, "Why the fuck do you want to be a teacher?" He literally said that to me, and I was like, "Well, I kind of want to be a teacher." And anyways, going towards that, it's about those checklists, right? And one thing that I wanted to add that Carmen said was the whole notion of self love and how it's just not prevalent at all. At least not in my family, and a lot of the family, and a lot of my family, and a lot of others that I've spoken to. It's always about sacrifice, working hard, and this and that. And those are good attributes. Don't get me wrong, but just the whole thing about self love and taking time out to value yourself, and outside of these monetary, outside of these certificates and things that you gain and all that stuff, just self love for yourself, and I think that was something that was definitely missing, something I didn't learn, and something that I got to be honest, a lot of my success now and a lot of my happiness is because I took the time to really work through all that stuff and give myself self-love, in the sense like I gotta take care of my shit. I gotta work through this stuff and go through my mental health journey and all that stuff. So I just wanted to uplift that message and elevate that, Carmen. I see Doc Rico and Denai are here. Thank y'all for joining us. Doc Rico, what do you want to add to the conversation that we're having right now. Doc Rico might be in a area where he has spotty internet or something. He's infamous for that. So, Doc Rico, we'll come back to you. What about you, Denai? What would you like to add to the conversation?
Hey, thanks for bringing me up. Great conversation, by the way. Uh, and like everybody else on the stage, I've struggled with it. I haven't struggled with the expectations much because, so when we came to this country, yeah, the American dream was a big thing for us. But for my brother, the American dream was for him to get an education, do well, have a family, and all of that fun stuff, right? Become an attorney, a doctor, whatever. For me, the expectation was do good in school and marry someone who's a doctor or a lawyer or what have you. And that used to piss me off as a kid because I was like, well, how about I just become that person that I'm supposed to marry. And that's what I did. I really, really chased success. And I did the same thing that everybody else here has talked about, which is have that checklist that you check off the things, your accomplishments and stuff like that. Um, and did it make me happy? Um, yeah, in some instances it made me happy because I proved to myself that I could achieve things that nobody thought I could achieve, right? Nobody really had any expectations for me, so it did make me happy. Is it everything in life? No, not at all. My children are everything in life, right? If I never had achieved anything, I know that I've achieved raising two amazing men, and having that love and fostering that love, right? And putting two decent human beings out into the world. So, excuse me. So yeah, no, they're two very, very different things. Success and I guess personal happiness are. I don't think they go hand in hand. I don't think you can't have both of them. I do know you can't have everything. Something suffers along the way, right? Nobody has the perfect marriage, the perfect kids, the perfect life, the perfect career, the perfect parents, perfect siblings, whatever. There's something's always going to be wrong or going to suffer. But yeah, no, I didn't have those expectations put on me, but I did put them on myself. And so that was my point of view. That's it. This is the night I'm done speaking.
Yeah, Denai, I was talking about that early in the room too, that I inherited these pressures just on my own. There was definitely not from my mom any pressure that was there, and most of it was actually from the absence of my dad, not necessarily him putting pressure on me. So it is interesting the things that we put on ourselves, and then we grow, in our different ways that we grow. And I agree with what you said, about the kids. Different things are important to you depending on what is going on in your life. I would think I would be the same way. If I actually had kids, they probably would be the most important thing to me. So, it's always giving ourselves grace to approach this and approach life in the way that is best for, circumstances that have come up for us. So I appreciate you bringing in the kid conversation as well. All right, so it looks like if I PTR, still Juan, you're first, but if you're not there, we'll go to Ray. Are you there?
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
finally back. I love this conversation because a lot of times my dad growing up, well, not even growing up, but as a young adult, his definition of success for me was have a house, have a house, have a house, have a house. And I really didn't want to buy a house because I didn't want to be stuck in a house. I wanted to, if I needed to move, I had the flexibility. So it was very interesting way of he looks at it because he looked at the people at church like, oh, they have like a small job or a big job, whatever, they have a house. And for me it was more about personal development. My success was about personal development and being able to connect with people at the highest level possible. So I spend most of my money in events, conferences, and like eating out a lot. because I realized that all the decision making was always after whatever when I lived in Baltimore, there was a lot of meetings
I think
for
you're a
public
little bit
planning.
choppy, one. I don't know if are you in the car or where are you at?
I'm always in the car.
Oh.
Don't you know this by now, Wendy? I'm always
I
in the car.
do know this by now. Okay, I just wanted to let you know your service is a little bit choppy. But I think we can understand what you're saying.
Basically, um, for me, success was being able to be connected, being able to not only connect for myself, but to help others. And when I was at different nonprofit organizations, I was able to bring up the next generation of Latinos to be whatever they want to be, whether it be entrepreneurs or engineers or programmers. For me, that was the most successful part. But my dad didn't really understand that. And for most of the part, I had to spend my own money because as a nonprofit organization, as like director of a nonprofit, I didn't make a lot of money. So he didn't realize, he didn't like, it didn't click in his head because like you have an engineering degree, you know, you were working at Verizon, big corporation, you had your own corporate card, you flew a lot, but I told my dad I was bored. I wasn't making a contribution. I wasn't helping people, and I needed to do something different. So I took a pay cut and started working in nonprofit in an education realm to helping more Latinos at that time go into college, get the high school to college path, and I was able to do that. And now I look back, and some of them are people that I've actually recommended for jobs and other things. So for me, it was buying a house and being tied down to that instead of being flexible to what I needed to do wasn't it. Now I'm older and I am buying a house, but I'm now letting the next generation do that work that I did when I was in my 20s and early 30s, and now I'm trying to help the generation behind me get the higher paying jobs, the executive jobs, in which way I can. But that for me is success.
Awesome, thanks. Ray, yeah, we heard you too. It's just fine. Thanks, Juan, for being here. Ray, do you want to hop in?
Sure. Growing up, I think I felt that success and happiness was like a permanent thing. And then as I got older and, you know, me being like a big sports fan, I realized that neither of them is something permanent. They're both like moments in time, or they could be more than just a moment in time, maybe a couple months. But after that, it depends on what your goal is. I saw this documentary on ESPN called Broke. Was it like a 30 for 30 special? And they talked about all these pro athletes that basically went broke. And when you think pro athlete, you think, oh, success. You think money. Oh, you think they have it made. But a lot of them go broke after. And I seen another documentary on how many former pro boxers ended up broke on their deathbed, like Joe Frazier, and on and on. A lot of them had like Don King as a promoter. So now I'm at the point where success is like a moment in time, and then um, I do what makes me happy as long as it's legal, and both of them are just moments in time that I'm always chasing for myself. And I don't think you'll ever permanently reach a success. And I've learned to just ignore other people, including family, because everybody always will have their own opinion of what success is. Me leaving the corporate bank, I know a lot of my family members, to this day don't understand it, but to me, that's not success. And I'm pausing the mic.
Yes, absolutely. I think my family is still struggling with the idea that I'm not going back to the federal government. I think we definitely have probably similar family views in that whole situation. So good to have you here, Ray. And I just want to reset the room real quick because we had a couple of people join us since we've been starting this conversation about releasing the pressure to succeed, and how do we, as we go through our life's journey, come into these places where we felt this pressure. I started my story with going from my home life to my education life to my career, and then eventually in leadership positions, sort of imposing this pressure on other people, and learning that I then needed actually to shield people versus give people pressure. And so it's been a learning process for me as well as I've gone through all of this. And I think one of the things we talked about a lot was, like, well, I'd say about 100% of us on stage are part of the Amigos crowd. So we are Latinx in some way. And our experience, as you hear threaded through all of this, does come from our family experience as well, and our, quote unquote immigration stories. My family is not has been here for a number of generations, so it's not necessarily the immigration story, but it's really my family history. And that comes from our immigration story. And as the generations in my family have grown up, my generation, and I particularly, am the most successful out of the generations, in recent times. Maybe I don't really know about when we were in Mexico, so I can't comment on that. But at least the ones that I know about here, we've been able to move the family forward in different ways, including going to college and getting professional jobs, and being successful in our family endeavors and all these other things, but not without a whole lot of unsuccessful times as well, collectively amongst my uncles and cousins and people in recent generations. So there was always this pressure that I felt to, one, continue to grow and to succeed in what I was doing, but then two, to lift up the generations after me. And it was really my niece and nephew, because I don't have kids, my niece and nephew, who the expectation was set for me as the example, to help them get into college, to help them figure out the financial aid system, to help them, anytime they had questions about how to navigate college or whatever, to do all these other things. And so when I knew they were watching me in college, one of the pressures to succeed was this pressure to be an example for them. And as I grew into, my career and have continued to support them in their education, they both finally did get their degrees, which took a number of years. There was a number of trials, but I'm so proud of them for having done that. But again, they both still also felt that pressure that they had to. And some of that pressure was helpful, because it did ultimately mean that they finished their degrees. But I know that they struggled with that pressure a lot as well. And so it really is something that, as a family, as you're moving towards generational wealth and generational health and all of these things, sometimes some of these pressures are really strong, and they may go away for a bit, they may come back, or they may come in a different form. And I think as my identity as Latinx or as a Latina, I have felt pressures that other people have not felt. And it is interesting to see, when we come together in community, that other people have felt similar pressures, and that we can talk about them and share and learn from each other's experience. So that's what we're here doing today. If you're coming into the conversation a little bit late, we're talking about how we've released the pressure to succeed, or if we've felt this pressure before, and what is our lived experience as people who are going through this life. And so if you want to come up and join us, Rodrigo or I will bring you up. Feel free to raise your hand. And if not, we'll just keep talking here on the stage. Just know that if you come up, replays are on, and we do use this room as a repurposing strategy to create a podcast. So you'll be part of our podcast, which is actually a cool thing. So a reason why you might want to come up on stage, because you might have inadvertently joined our podcast. So so glad to have you guys here. And I'm just going to open it up to whoever wants to jump in.
Hey, I wanted to reflect on what Coach Ray said earlier. I love that, he mentioned that, because I did something similar last year, 2 years ago, where I left a relatively safe position, and had a nice salary and all that good stuff. But I wasn't happy. And when I decided, like, to make a move, I had a lot of resistance from folks, within my circle, even just friends like myself, that are my age and maybe have gone through similar experiences. And it's just so crazy how so entrenched that idea is of kind of comfort and security and safety. And I get it, because I subscribe to it at times myself, right? But when somebody does venture out, like Ray, and says, like, hey, I'm gonna leave this position and venture out to something else, the amount of pushback you get, because people are so, they're so firm in what they believe is success and what they believe is happiness, that they start imposing that kind of viewpoint on yourself. Like, they can't even conjure it up. Like, oh my God, why would you do that? Oh my God, I would be so happy to have your position. Or, my God, you make so much money. Why would you do that? And this and that. And it's understandable for them. But for, myself, and I'm sure for Coach Ray, it's like, I want to define my own success. I want to define my own happiness. And I think that's when you really are successful. When you start defining it, it's not even like accomplishing it, right? Now, I don't know about Ray, Ray, and maybe Ray can share a little bit more about that, right? But for me, when I decided to leave, I just felt like I needed something different. Like I had already done everything I could in that field, in that realm, and I said I want a different challenge. I want something else. I already knew that I had already accomplished my main goal, to Denai's point, and raise my two boys. I felt like, hey, I did what I wanted to do with my boys. My boys are two great, kind, compassionate, and caring, individuals. They're good, solid, members of society. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean I wasn't going to be in their lives. Obviously, I still am, and now my son lives with me. But at the time, I felt like, you know what, I've done what I needed to do. I want to venture out, and it was just so fascinating for everybody to just like, their mind was blown. They literally could not figure out why I would do that. And I said, no, I got other goals now. I have other things that I want to accomplish. I want to define that. And I think that is the key when we take ownership and we define our own success and we define our own happiness, that we really are successful. And again, it doesn't matter if that road actually leads to quote unquote success. In other words, I quit this job, right? Or I left this job, and when I left the job, I become a blogger, and maybe now I make 23K, and I'm not that successful, right? And I'm struggling. But you know what? Fuck it. I at least I feel like I'm successful because I ventured out and did what I wanted to do. And I think that really is the success, and really and possibly the happiness that people are looking for when we own and we define what success and happiness is for ourselves.
You know what, Rodrigo? I love that you said that. And that reminds me, in 2013, my youngest, who's 19 now, was 9 years old, and my oldest had just come back from a tour in Afghanistan. And, we had the big house and the cars and all that stuff. And, from the outside looking in, everybody would think, oh, this family's got everything. They're so successful. But really, I spent my days, working like a maniac and running around everywhere, and like going to PTA meetings and birthday parties and baptisms, and just like we were overscheduled as a family. And I had a come to Jesus moment, and realized, I raised one kid, and he went to war. He's a man. He went to war, and here's the 9-year old, and I'm going to blink and it's going to be gone. And, I don't want my memories to be just, chauffeuring everybody everywhere and running around everywhere. Um, I want real memories. I want to build memories that, when I'm older, I can just look back and smile and enjoy them and relive them. And so what I did was I rented out my house, sold all my furniture, put put any like the important things like photos and anything that I wanted to keep in a storage unit, bought an RV, and I went cross country for 3 years with my family. And my family thought I lost my ever loving mind. They thought I turned into a gypsy. They thought I must have been running from the law. Like every possible scenario that you could imagine that people talked shit, they talked shit. And all it was that I made the decision that my American dream, the things that make me successful and happy are going to be the things that I define as making me successful and happy. And so I did. I never went camping a day in my life before that. And then went from that to having an RV and learning how to like plug it in everywhere, finding the places to go, the campgrounds, and we did it. And it was the most life altering experience ever. My youngest son, it was like more well traveled in 1 year than I ever had been in my life, because we went everywhere, and it was amazing. And I homeschooled him. That was another thing that like everybody lost their shit over. But he got to learn about American history by going to every single monument, and going and getting his junior ranger badges everywhere at all of the monuments. And we visited everything. We went cross country, like I think 8 times. I mean, it was epic, but nobody in my family could wrap their brains around how special of a thing that was. All they could think of was, you're living in an RV. You went from a big house to an RV. How can you do that? And they didn't get it. So I hear you when you're saying that people judge what you want to define as success by what they want to have. And so, yeah, well, former gypsy here, but I'm so glad I did it. And I'm only sorry that I stopped, but I had to.
Oh my gosh, that's like my American dream, to be a gypsy. I love that. I deny you just got infinitely cooler in my book. I already thought you were cool, but you
For
got actually
real.
way cooler right now.
Yeah, that's my dream, to be the nice kid.
Right? Can you adopt us the next time you're trying to drive around this country? I'm
Yeah.
down to make fires.
I got a camper that's as far as I've gone for now because I can take little trips here and there, make those memories until both my boys go through college. And again, well, one of them, because the other one is pursuing his happiness, right? So I think we need to promote more for people to pursue their own happiness. I think we put too much pressure on success, and that's whatever success looks in our eyes, right? Like I had to learn with my oldest that how I see success is not how he sees success, right? Because whatever makes me happy may not make him happy. So it was a lot of more pressuring him to find his own happiness. How can I help you? What is it that you like? How can I support you in that process? And, that's what he's doing. He's pursuing his happiness. He's going to have a few bumps in the road, but that's just life. And as long as he's happy, to me, he is successful. And that's all that matters to me as a parent at the end of the day, for my kids to be happy, and that success, just whatever that may be for them, it's their happiness. So we just need to promote more of that pursuit of happiness. For me, then I just the same thing. I'm so happy plugging in my camper somewhere, sitting by the beach and just being a bum. And that's the happiest things that I could do, right? Some people don't like it. That's on them, right? Just find your own happiness. And I think as culturally, we need to start pushing that in our culture of promoting pursuit of happiness instead of pressuring our kids to find success that we think that our ancestors thought, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be this, be that. It's like, no, if you're happy being, I don't know, going cross country in an RV, then as long as you're not hurting anyone, go for it.
Yeah, I agree, Carmen, and I think that a lot of that has to do with surviving. Unfortunately, especially within marginalized communities, right? If you have the opportunity and the capacity to have a certain, I don't want to say stature, but a position that will hopefully influence and promote, or our culture, our people, and whatnot. I think a lot of that survivor, mentality is to like, hey, we got to push that. We got to push that. Doesn't matter if you like it or not, but we need you there. And I get that, right? And at certain times I feel like maybe that does need to happen. I know that for myself, I still feel like I do need to do certain things just because I'm in a privileged state and I have the capacity to do them. So therefore I need to do them, right? But again, that's my choice. That's not something that I, get foisted upon by somebody else or whatnot. With my boys, I do the same exact thing you're doing, Carmen. And I think my boys are very happy. They're very, I give them a lot of agency, a lot of capacity to make their own choices. And at the end of the day, like you said, they might fall here, they might fall there, this and that, but it's their choice. They are happy with their choices, regardless of the choices end up in failure or not as successful as they thought they were going to be. But at the very least, they got to choose that. And I've never imposed, whatever I wanted on my kids. I feel like, hey, as long as they're happy, then that's it. That's all there is to it. And my son, my youngest now, he's probably the one that for all intents and purposes is going to break the cycle, because at the end of the day my son is very adamant. He's like, I don't really care about college. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go to college. I want to be in IT somehow and do this and that. And I said, okay, you know what I'm saying? As long as you have a plan, you're good to go, right? And within the last year, year and a half, no, yeah, last year, he has slowly come to the point where he makes the choice now that he wants to go to college. He told me, you know, about 2 weeks ago, right? He's like, hey, I heard that, you know, since I live here now in San Antonio, that I can go to community college for free. I said, yeah, you could do that. It's like, yeah, I think I want to do that. Yeah, I want to do that. And then after that, you know, go to like a 4 year program. I was like, okay, cool, man. That's cool with me, man. Let's make that happen. And for me, he ended up doing what I wanted him to do, to be honest, right? But he arrived to that point on his own. And he felt like, hey, you know what? That's how I'm going to succeed. That's how I'm going to be happy. And I couldn't be more proud of him because at the end of the day, he's taking charge of his own life and he's creating that. So even though he's going down the route that probably my dad obviously wants, that I want for him, he's doing that on his own volition. He's doing it on his own choice, and it really, it just brightened up my day when he did that. Not because it made me happy, because it made him happy, and he realized on his own, hey, I'm gonna be happy doing this. Why shouldn't I do that? So I really appreciate your input there, Carmen, when it comes to that pressure to succeed, because you are definitely breaking those chains. And Deny with her travel RV story is definitely breaking those chains. Because if I told that to my parents, like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna do this, they would totally tell me that I'm out my fucking mind. My dad would be like, yo sé que te gusta camping, pero tranquilo, güey, ¿por qué estás haciendo? You know, he would totally go off the rails about that.
Hey, I'm with Rodrigo's dad as the same thing. My parents, if I would say I'll grab an RV and travel the country, they'd be like, "Que carajo? What the hell?" You know, they were already upset with me going to Peru and try, and, you know, and hiking for 4 days in the mountain. You know, imagine what, a whole year. Oh wow, they would have lost.
So it's
I, I have
interesting.
I have to I have to add this. When I told my dad like years ago, right, that I was taking the boys camping and going hiking, my dad literally responded with like, you want to go hiking? Mira, vete a Monterrey y empieza desde allí y camínate todo hasta El Paso y luego vete hiking ahí a ver cómo te gusta. He was weaponizing his he's weaponizing his own,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
crossing of the border against me. Like I'm fucking wasting my time hiking. You want to do real hiking? Go, you know, do that. I'm like, wow, man. But anyways, again, I give my dad grace. I mean, that's just the way he was raised, and that's just the way, you know, he kind of sees the world. So
Well, and I love that our families apparently need us to be home and working in our jobs somewhere in an office in order for us to be successful, is what I'm gathering from all of these different tidbits. But when you are, especially if you're on the entrepreneur side, this must seem absolutely absurd to them. I mean, when I tell my family I have not had a paycheck from someone in 6 months, they're looking at me like, well, when are you going to go get a paycheck? Like, are you just going to like, why don't you just go out and get a paycheck tomorrow? And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. So it's really, really funny to hear, you know, how many different aspects of your life you can be judged on and have pressure to succeed. And it's not always just like, you know, about your life in the professional aspect. It can also be about, you know, my family pressures me about why I'm not married or why I haven't found a suitable husband or whatever it is. You know, there's so many things in there to unpack that come from that family part that sort of spill into the other aspects of your experience. And this conversation has been magical. It was definitely everything I wanted and more because I appreciate all of the stories. I love the stories. I think the stories are a very powerful way to learn from the community members. And I know we're here for another like 6-ish minutes. So I'm just going to leave space for anybody who wants to either come up and talk or anyone who's on the stage who wants to share or build on something that's already been said. Or call attention to something that really resonated with you, feel free, and we'll be here till the top of the hour.
So, just a quick thing before I go back into the matrix. I like what Ray was saying, that success is sort of like, um, you know, it goes up and down, up and down. You're only there for a minute or two, and then you back down. Going back to the hiking analogy, that's when I really understood when you talk about mountaintop success, you know, from peak to valley. Because every time I went to the top of one valley or one mountain peak, then I realized I had to go to the next one to get to where I wanted to go, but that means I had to go down again. And you think going down is easy, but actually walking down a mountain is actually harder on your hips and knees than going up one. So I've used that analogy, and I love when Ray said that because, yes, you have these goals of that what you want success to be like or be, but you have to climb up it, and then you have to come down because you can't stay up there. You can't live in a mountain. You can't live on top. There's no food. There's no vegetation. There's very little. You have to come back down, and then you have to go back up and come back down. So that's my new sort of way of life. It's like I know I find something new. Like for me, is my digital art. That's my new mountain that I'm climbing. Eventually, I'll get to the top where I feel like, oh my God, I'm successful. Then I have to come back down, and then I have to go to the next mountaintop. So that's a little tip.
I'm an avid hiker, so I know that the knee problems going downhill. You're not lying about that. And I think that the success of going up and down, as I mentioned earlier in the room, but we never really talked about it, is this fear of failure, right? So the reason that we're trying to constantly keep going up, up, up is because when you go down, it seems like there's a failure in there. And there's not always a failure. I mean, sometimes there's just lessons learned and life challenges and things that happen, circumstances, whatever. But your brain thinks that there's this failure that's coming. It doesn't have to be a failure. You don't have to interpret it as a failure. But one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to not feel pressure is because the alternative of succeeding is failing, essentially, or at least not moving forward or staying stagnant, right? So either option is generally not what you want if you're trying to grow and learn and move forward. So I think that for me, at least in my experience of going up and down, the times when I've gone down, I mean, I'm real clear that you can only go so far down before you got to come back up. And I'm very, I push myself on the down even to not fall too low because I have a bottom barrier that I won't allow myself to get past in whatever it is that I'm doing. And I have been able to work on flipping that script in my brain from, okay, you can't fail too bad. You can have a little bit of a challenge here, but you can't let it get worse than this, to saying, okay, that was a meaningful experience that I needed to experience, but now from here I need to move forward, and in order to move forward, I need to grow in this way. And then really pushing myself on the growth part being the important part, then the tumble down from the success. And I think that formula in my head, every time I find myself doing that over and over again, it gets quicker. The amount of time that I can reframe my thoughts is shorter each time I catch myself. So I don't know if anybody else has had this experience before, but I know that at least for me, I have been able to retrain some of my thinking here. But the first part of the retraining that I always teach people in any kind of cognitive reframing, whether it's imposter syndrome or stuff like this, is capturing that moment when you realize you're having the negative thought in order to stop and then reframe it after. So as I'm having the fear of failure, or as I'm overachieving because I'm afraid to fail, being able to say, oh, I recognize what this is, and then I have another strategy to deal with it.
Yeah, just to add to that, Wendy, I always tell people, what is the worst thing that anybody can say to you? It's no. What is the worst thing that can happen? You fail. Did you learn something from it? At the end of the day, you have succeeded. You learned something. You're growing. You're constantly growing even from your failures. And you need to celebrate every success, every failure, because trust me that you have gained something one way or another. So always staying with that positive outlook. It does help us grow, and it does help us stay positive and continue to reach for the stars, whatever stars those are for you.
I just want to add that I really appreciate Carmen and I, y'all really just breaking these kind of cycles, and I think that's really the most critical thing for our kids, to make sure that we break those cycles for them so that they're really not kind of bonded to these ideas of what success and happiness are. And not to necessarily say that our ideas or even our parents' ideas are wrong, but to let them define what success and happiness is for them. And I think that's really the best gift, one of the best gifts that we can give to our kids in breaking those kind of those cyclical traumas. Instead of just passing down like you got to do this, you got to do that, and living vicariously through them is allowing them to explore what they want to do and what and again what definitions they want to have and take out for what is success and what is happiness. So kudos to both of y'all. Dr. Rico, I saw you on mic. Feel free to share.
I would just say, when we're talking about, going down, I always see it as a challenge, never as a failure. And then the recovery time. I know that when I many years ago lost one of my first business, that failure took me a long time to recover, and it was always stuck in my head, replaying, and so if you have those moments, you need to try to bounce back as fast as possible, and not see it as a failure. See it as, you took a chance, you were ahead of the curve, and then just move forward, because then you're stuck in a loop, and then you define your own. You stop defining your own success, and then you just have that experience define who you are, and that you can't do that. It eats at you, and it's something that still, like, sometimes eats at me, but it's something that you need to move forward. So I always tell people, when they come to something that they say they fail, just take it as a challenge and move forward, because it's going to eat at you if you keep on pondering.
Ooh, that's a good one. One of the things that I heard, one of the quotes I heard that I love is, "The only L's I take are lessons," right? But but it's a lot more than that. And I think that's a great topic, Wendy. We should definitely have that topic, Wendy, because it is difficult sometimes when we do take those chances or we do take a risk, and there's some failure involved in there, right? And how do we recover from that? Because I've had businesses in the past that didn't quite pan out, or when you are on your entrepreneur journey and you have to take a step back or a perceived step back. When people say, like, well, you're an entrepreneur, but why are you working this 9 to 5 job or whatever, right? And how the kind of those ramifications, lead to, certain feelings when you're an entrepreneur.
Now that you've joined our community by listening to this podcast episode, I want to welcome you to participate in a conversation with our collective very soon. If you're not on the Clubhouse app, you can connect to me on any social media platform as Wendy Veloz, VELOZ. I'd like to thank everyone in our community who participated in this episode, and especially my partners in crime, Santiago and Rodrigo. Until next episode, keep changing the world.